This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing today? Well, today is going to be a sobering thought, I think, for Dr. Jack Kruse comes up with spit and fire. Before we get to any of that, how about we talk some silver and gold? The number of ounces of silver needed to buy an ounce of gold now at near 30-year highs. Silver is now a bargain price when compared to gold. It's a perfect time to protect a portion of your savings with silver, and Silver Gold Bull has a wide variety of best value silver for every budget. Simply text or email Grahame for details. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to precious metals, Grahame will work with you to answer your questions and recommend the best products that meet your investing goals. All you got to do is go down the show notes. All the information is there. He can get you, Grahame can, anything around buying, selling, storing, or using your retirement accounts to invest in precious metals. If you're on silvergoldbull.com or .ca, just make sure to reference the Shaun Newman Podcast. Bow Valley Credit Union is your Alberta-regulated, fully serviced financial institution, and they're proud to present the first in Canada gold collateral lending. Now all of you can lend against your physical gold and silver for favorable rates. It's like a HELOC on your gold and silver. Don't have any physical gold and silver? Well, they can get you a loan to purchase that as well. All you got to do is, honestly, just go down the show notes, but email welcome@bowvalleycu.com. You'll get say hello to Leanna, and she can get your BVCU membership started today. Diamond 7 Meats. Tired of the big chain stores? Discover Diamond 7 Meats, a family-run business you can trust, serving our community for the past 26 plus years. And in all the conversations I've had with their staff, they kept repeating how important the values of honesty and integrity while serving all of our community have been. They offer cuts you'll find at all the retail stores, and their expert staff can help with whether, what thickness you want, what type of cut you actually want. How many of us just go buy the sirloin and don't maybe do a little more digging into maybe what type of cut do you actually want or look for? How big, how thick do you want it? Cooking temps, all that stuff. They got some expert staff there that can find exactly what's going to satisfy you and exactly what you love. All you got to do is just give them a call and tell them what you like, and they'll cut it fresh for you to have that day. You can find them on the north end of town, Highway 17 and 67th Street North. You can also just stop in and grab something from the freezer too. You don't have to make a specific call, especially maybe if you're a little unknown to what you want out of your meat. All you got to do is give Diamond 7 a call today, 306-825-9718. Caleb Taves, Renegade Acres. When it comes to concrete, let me tell you, I can't recommend Caleb and his team enough, and by his team I mean his kids. That's who came out and did my concrete, stamped concrete floor on the new studio, and you won't find many better men than Caleb Taves. And there you go, Renegade Acres. When it comes to concrete, look no further than those gentlemen. Cornerstone Forum 2026, we're in the works. We're making it happen. As I get more information, I'm going to keep, I'll update you here. We got the new studio. Yes, it's coming here in 2025. If you want to be on that legacy wall, skills, labor, materials, money, shoot me a text and I'll give you the details. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to do all the things, because we all know, the algorithms and everything else probably aren't going to help me all that much with conversations like today's. Just going to be a guess. Well, let's get on to that tale of the tape. Today's guest is a neurosurgeon, quantum clinician, author and CEO of Kruse Longevity Center. I'm talking about Dr. Jack Kruse. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Jack Kruse. Jack, thanks for coming back on the show.
No problem.
I think, where I sit here in Canada, I've been paying attention to Russia, Ukraine, and everything going on there. And then, of course, everything that's escalated in the Middle East. I've been curious, just your thoughts on, U.S. goes in, bombs nuclear sites, and then Iran turns around and bombs an airfield or a U.S. military base. What do you see, or what are your thoughts on what's happening over in the Middle East?
Psyops mostly. I don't think this is signal. I think it's all noise. I think the most interesting thing that came out of the Iranian target is that the Bitcoin hash rate dropped tremendously when Iran was hit. So why do I believe that the United States targeted this? The story that they have the normies believe is, the nuclear story, which I think is total bullshit. But do I think that there's an issue with guys like David Sachs and Lutnick? Are they concerned about centralization in Bitcoin mining? Much more so than anybody realizes. I think that's probably a bigger issue. Why? Because the United States is $37 trillion in debt. It's the global reserve currency. Just about the entire system is built on it. So if mining tends to be centralized, you need to do something, or I should say, let's flip this around. I believe that the United States likes the fact that mining is centralized. Why? Because that is a way in which they could potentially externally control the Bitcoin network. And I think the reason why they targeted that place in Iran is because they knew that Iranians had a shit ton of miners there. And that's the reason why we saw the hash rate drop when it got hit. To me, that was the signal and not the noise. I think the story that you guys heard and probably believed was something different. When I was in Bitcoin Prague, giving my 3 talks, I looked at the hash when it happened, and I mentioned to a couple of Bitcoin miners that were there that I thought that this was a big issue. And I believe it or not, there's some big guys in Bitcoin that believe that. I mean, the guys that are running ocean mining certainly believe it, but there's a lot of people in Bitcoin that believe even they're part of the consortium to centralize mining. Because if you know anything about, Bitcoin, it's decentralized. And if you're going to bring Bitcoin in to the U.S. Treasury market like Lutnick wants to do, and David Sachs is behind, then one of the ways in which you can control the network is if you can centralize mining. Now, centralized mining is not an easy thing to do, but it's been made much more easy through the actions of, how shall we say, the 2 people controlling the groups in the United States. The Blue Party, which is the Democrats, pretty much beholden to the Chinese Communist Party, and then the other party, the Red Party, that's controlled by the dudes on Wall Street and in the desert in Israel. That's really the 2 sides of the argument. And as I've laid out on other, podcasts in pretty detailed fashion, the history before, how should we say, the modern world, where modern mining is, that's where Meyer Lansky, David Shaun, Len Sassman, prior to the cypherpunks, come in. That's when the powers that be lost control of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin became open sourced. Now I think you see the technocrats and the bankers fighting each other over ways in which they can now try to control Bitcoin externally. Do I think it's going to be successful on either account? The answer is, in one sense, yes, if you're a normie and you have no Bitcoin now. For example, you as a Canadian, and you see what's going on with Carney now, which is far worse than really what went on with Trudeau. Your country is effectively fucked. The Canadians that are no coiners are fucked. But let's be quite frank. If you're following along this psyops that I'm laying out for you, if you're a Canadian and you already own Bitcoin, this is like the greatest news ever. Like if you're already in before nation state adoption is in, you effectively are grandfathered into the control and compliance network that's being built all around you.
Curious, when you say compared to Trudeau with Carney, we're fucked. Could you elaborate on that just a bit?
Carney's been working with he's been working with the World Economic Forum, and you have to know where the World Economic Forum comes from. 1971, that's when you get Henry Kissinger, Klaus Schwab, and Prince Charles all together to basically have a new iteration of what the monarchy's been all about. The Council of Foreign Relations, the Committee of 300, you any of the synonyms that you want to use, but that's the modern track. And then you have all the young global leaders, of which Trudeau was one. Carney is another one. Carney, though, is a little bit more seasoned than Trudeau. Why? Because he has serious chops tied to the Bank of England. And I would tell you, authoritarianism is coming to Canada at a much faster rate under Carney than under Trudeau. And I've told my Canadian members literally for 10 years, this was coming. And the ones that listen to me have been very, very happy that they made the decisions they made. But the people today, even in the Bitcoin space, I really believe even if you own a lot of Bitcoin, you're going to have a significant trouble in places like the UK, Canada, and Australia, because they're all part of the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth is really the people that are driving the show for the people in the desert in Israel. Israel has its own risks too. I think the war that's going on with Netanyahu is a way for him to save his ass from the corruption trial, that's going on in Israel. If that war doesn't exist, with the genocide of Gaza, I think Bibi's on trial in Israel. There's a lot of people fed up with Bibi in Israel. And this is the American intelligence agencies trying to help, I think, Bibi out one last time. That's really how I see it. And do I think the mining play, which has really been in play, I'm going to tell you, it goes all the way back before, these people set the trap with Ethereum. It came very, very close to fruition under the Biden administration because Biden supported the people that are behind Ethereum. The people behind Ethereum are the CCP. And their front man, just like your front man in Canada is Carney, is Vitalik Buterin. And when you understand the players, because I don't think, to be honest with you, Shaun, I don't think many people understand the front man and the guys running the show on the back. And you're allowed to see the facade, but not the puppeteers in the back. And when you understand that this is really like a Marvel Comics book where you have the old school controllers, which are the bankers, the Rothschilds, and the Rockefellers fighting the technocrats, and the technocrats believe fundamentally that they can control things without controlling the monetary system. The bankers have always believed that they can do that as long as they control fiat money. And when you're in debt, $37 trillion, you're effectively screwed. You're controlled. The problem is Bitcoin actually is an outcard for that. And that's something that the Rothschilds and Rockefellers know. They learned about that from Meyer Lansky in 69 and 70, as I laid out in other podcasts. And that's why they have to get Canada, Australia, and continental Europe, meaning the EU, as fast as they can to a CBDC. Why? Because that locks you or ossifies you in to that form of economic slavery. What's likely going to happen in the United States with the technocrats is a different type of economic slavery, where they're going to attempt to let the normies have Bitcoin, but they're going to try to control or cap Bitcoin the similar way they did to the silver and gold market, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, by controlling the on-ramps and off-ramps. And they think the best way for them to do that right now is not through the off and on-ramps, which is what Biden was doing. They're trying to use mining potential to do that. We'll see if it happens. I've got a very, very strong sense that this will be another attack that Bitcoin stands up to and washes away. They've been trying to attack it, since the beginning, and nothing's really worked.
Just sticking on Carney for a second, because I think it's important for Canadians to hear an outside view in. right? One of the thing is we'll wait and see, right? There's lots of
You
things
can't
going
wait
on.
and see. That's the biggest problem with Canadians. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. This is where Americans and Canadians have a similar problem. There's people in MAGA, people in Maha who say, "Hey, they're playing 4D chess, not checkers." That's bullshit. Let me just tell you something. They are procrastinating because they don't have the power to do the things that they want to do. And I'm going to tell you, Carney came in because the globalists that control Canada didn't believe that Trudeau had the chops to get you guys to a true economic slavery state. And Carney has those chops. Why? Because he did it. He's already demonstrated to the global elitists that he was able to do it, through the Bank of England when he worked there. And remember, he's intimately involved with some of the big players in the United States. Everybody knows that he's the one that gave the big deal to Kushner, who's Trump's, son-in-law, to save some of his real estate that he was going to lose in Manhattan. And people forget, as part of this whole global plan, SBF fell on the sword for these guys. He's also part of this elite financial plan to try to get, control. The problem is the way they tried to do it with SBF was too haphazard. That was, the Biden administration really fumbling the ball because they really didn't know what they were doing. When you have people who have political power, but they're fighting people who, with economic interests that are way smarter. We're talking about the smartest people in the world now, okay? These people have been in power for a really, really long time. And Carney is one of their proxy men now. The proxy man in Canada is much, much stronger with Carney than it was with Trudeau. And I have to be honest with you. I think if Canadians go much further, like the single most important thing, if I was in your shoes, Shaun, in Canada right now, I would absolutely move to Alberta, and I would fundamentally double, triple, quadruple down that Alberta has to secede from Canada. Like some province there has to pull this out. I once thought that may happen in a place like the United States and Texas, but what did the economic powers in the United States do? They made sure that everybody from Illinois, Texas, California, New York relocated to Texas so that it would become a purple state, so that risk wouldn't really happen. And they've been very successful at doing that over the last 15 years. The people in Canada, especially under Trudeau, I would say that Alberta is pretty much kind of like Texas used to be 20 years ago. These are people that are very wealthy, very decentralized. They're in the oil and gas industry. It's really the bell cow of Canada. And they don't suffer from the leftist policies of the CCP in British Columbia, like Vancouver, through real estate. And they certainly don't have the EU mindset of the idiots that are in Ontario and Quebec. So to me, Carney's brought in to try to rein in the misfits in Canada, which are the people in Alberta. And if I'm Canadian, if I'm in Alberta, I'm leaving. There's no way I would stay. Why? Because you can come back to Canada after, the failed state happens. Because I think, and I told people in Bitcoin Prague this, I literally just came back yesterday. I think that the Commonwealth countries and continental Europe, not the former Soviet bloc, are facing 50 to 75 years of economic slavery coming to their shores. And I don't think there's very much they can do to stop it, even if they own Bitcoin. Why? Because they're going to be crippled not only by the mining issue, but also on and off ramps. So the real key is to try to get out. And you're a Canadian. You know this better than I do. If you went to the bank right now and try to remove your money, you know that it would be almost an impossible task to do. They've already locked that down.
When you're talking to Albertans, I sit in Alberta, and there's heated discussions going on right now.
Shouldn't be heated. These shouldn't be heated at all. These should be absolutely matter of fact at the dinner table every day. You guys should already have a pair of refundable airline tickets ready to go. you should have a plan to take your assets out of Canada. If you don't have that, then I'm just going to tell you, as a Canadian, as a Shaun Newman listener, you're not on Jack Kruse territory. You're not smart enough to really have a discussion with me about this. You are way behind the scenes. You are now at the level of the Titanic. The boat is coming out of the water, getting ready to split in half. You have to be mentally ready to make some of the most difficult decisions that you're ever going to have to make in your life. And if you don't make the correct decision, not only is you and your family going to be affected, but generations of your family will be affected. That's how serious the situation is. And you no longer have the luxury of time.
Just this past week, the Premier of Alberta met with the Premier of Saskatchewan in Lloydminster, where I sit. And they brought their entire caucuses of both sides. It's the first time, I've been told, since 1905 when the provinces were first formed. It looks that the West is positioning itself as much as it can, or if Carney, the way they say it is talk is cheap, we'll see if actions happen in the next 6 months. What you're saying is, don't wait 6 months.
No way.
Keep hammering the pedal down on getting out.
No, I to be honest with you, I think the economic machine that is Alberta is getting the oil out of the ground. If you take those people out there, you will leave your best asset in the ground, because the idiots that Carney represents, that Trudeau represents, they're just like the people that run Venezuela. The oil will stay in the ground. They will never be able to get it out. They are technologically impotent. They are not wise players. They are hell-bent on turning Canada into what you see is happening in Europe. So that's the reason why Carney was installed. So the smart people in Canada that have this technological know-how, you take your wealth until this passes, then you'll be able to come back. Because I do believe there's going to be a time for you to come back to Canada. Now, I say this as a guy who's an American who believes the same thing about America. Like, I've been out of America for quite a bit of time, not because I don't have faith in my government. The government's already gone. If you want to know the truth, I spent the last 3 years of my life trying to work with the new government, and now the new government's in, and you can see they're same as the old boss. No different. So now I know, and I said this from the stage in Prague, that the only hope for America is Bitcoin. The Trojan horse that Trump did bring in, the reason why he got my vote is I wanted him to free Ross Ulbricht, which he did in 48 hours. Second thing I wanted him to do was to bring Bitcoin into the discussion of Washington, D.C., which he's done. But I think that was a necessity, because it's clear that the global bond market is right now teetering on the edge. That's what's actually supporting this whole thing. And guys like Carney wanted to go boom. Why? Because then you have another issue like you have with the Canadian trucker issue, where you'll have to default to get money out of the bank. And they'll say, we have a solution for this, CBDC. Our friends at the BIS have this ready to go through. Our allegiance is with the Bank of England. This is the reason why King Charles was just in Canada in the last month. Let them know we're ready to go. So that's why I say, you guys, I don't think I guess I need to be a little bit more brutally honest with Canadians, because you guys are way too fucking nice. You have done a shitty job with making a diagnosis. Remember what my day job is. As a brain surgeon, I have to make the diagnosis. And to me, this has been obvious for 10 years. And you guys have completely shit the bed on this. Okay? You need to take your best and brightest and move them somewhere where the wealth that they have now is protected, and then you can come back, because these people are going to run Canada into the ground, just the same way Maduro did it in Venezuela. And they'll nationalize the oil fields, they'll do all of that, but they have no capability to get that oil out of the ground. And I can tell you one thing's for sure, people in the United States, meaning Trump or his next proxy, which will be JD Vance, Peter Thiel, and the PayPal Mafia guys, they will do nothing to help Canada remove that oil from the ground. Why? Because these are two opposing issues. The guys that are running Canada right now are the Rothschilds and Rockefellers. The guys running the United States predominantly, who's won, is the technocrats. And these people are mortal enemies, okay? Because they both want control. Now, they're really bad for you and me because no matter who wins, is which devil is worse, okay? But the bottom line is Trump, JD Vance, and the technocrats are not going to come steal the oil out of Alberta. There's going to have to be another battle down the road that's very similar to the battle that we fought, with the King of England in 1774, where the people rise up and take power back and completely abolish the imperial monarchy centralized idea. Unfortunately, I don't think Canada is ready for that. They're not even ready for a minor step, never mind that major step. And the proof in the pudding, for me, you can argue with me all you want, but you guys just put fucking Carney in after this. So you can't, if you have any faith in your countrymen, you're a bigger fucking idiot than most Americans in MAGA. So I lost that illusion in the people in MAGA as soon as I saw the things that went on with Trump. He's doing the right things in money, but he's doing the wrong things in everything else. So that's how I know. You have to be very careful. You have to be a good diagnostician, and you really have to protect your family's sovereignty and freedom. If you don't do that, then you're going to have to deal with the consequences.
Well, I remember at the start of COVID, 2020, roughly, sitting there, and my mindset has obviously changed because you can't go through that and then not flip it. I mean, then you're doomed to repeat over and over again and never get out of this shit show.
Correct.
But my thought was, it can't be that bad. Can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. And then, you get into 2022, late 2021, I might argue, in the dark days of winter here. And it's like, it is this bad. Like we have, like, what's going on? And then the truckers went. And, overnight things started to change and it opened back up. And
Well, just remember what the impetus was, Shaun. I want you to remember this. This is the important thing for your Canadian audience to hear. If it wasn't for Bitcoin, it wouldn't have been open. That's the key pathway. Bitcoin allows you to have a lifeline to a lloydial title where everything else is being taken away. So I think you skate over that way too easily, kind of like the Edmonton Oilers tried to skate over the Panthers recently. And
that didn't go so well.
No, but I mean, it hasn't gone well for Edmonton since Gretzky left. Let's face it. I mean, Canada hasn't won their own cup in a really long time. And
1993. Yeah.
I'm not saying this to be an asshole to Canadians. What I'm saying to you is that I think that actually is a proxy for what's going on in your country, that you guys are not thinking with your head. You're thinking with your hearts, and you're like, I can't believe this is really happening. Yeah, when are you going to wake up? That's the key. And the key is no one in any government is coming to save you. And I almost hate to say this, but when Trump said what he said, that Canada could be the 51st state, that would have probably been a better choice than what you got in Carney. Not that it's a prize package choice either, but it's way better than what you have in Carney. Why? Because I think Albertans could have lived in that structure, continued to drill the oil. I think that the most important thing is I think the people in Alberta are the ones that have to get rid of the effect of real estate. You guys all have to hope for the implosion of real estate. And I know when I say this, especially Canada, because you guys have an inordinate amount of wealth in real estate in Vancouver and Toronto. Places in Toronto should cost $300,000 and $400,000, not $3 and $4 million. And you don't realize that is directly tied to the money printer problem. Your money printer problem in Canada is worse than the United States, if you can believe that. But it's true when you look at the numbers. And everybody in Canada thinks that they're doing so well, but all that's inflated money. And then you have the true morons in Quebec that really need to, go back and seed, to where they came from, which is, the monarchies in Europe. And those monarchies right now, I submit, are exactly like Soviet states were in the 40s and 50s. I mean, remember, Czechoslovakia, Prague, the Bitcoin Prague meeting, this is the most ironic part of this story. I think every Canadian should get on a plane right now and go to a former Eastern Bloc. The reason they'll never go back the way continental Europe is headed, they know what centralization gives them. Canada is about to find out, what Romania had to live through, what Yugoslavia had to live through. But that lesson in those Europeans, they want no part of centralization. And you guys just voted for it. You voted for a worse outcome than what you even had in Trudeau. And as hard as that is for me to fathom, someone from the outside has to tell you guys this. And you have to stop trusting the fucking idiots in Vancouver, in Toronto, and in Montreal. They're your enemy.
Yeah, if I go back to your first thing about U.S., Iran, that type of thing, you said PSYOP. And here in Canada, if you were paying attention, which I know my audience was, we watched through the election and just a masterful PSYOP be played with Carney turning Trump and elbows up and everything, and watch almost overnight. Everything flipped. Everything just, and we're voting in Carney, and you're like, we're going to do what? And that has been, I think, to this audience, was wild to see. And yet, it was just it would have been just like walking into COVID with your eyes open, which I did not have at the time.
Worse. You guys are still in Canada. You want to know the truth? Let me just tell you something. Ideation without execution leads to deletion of every good idea. Any person in Canada that had this idea that doesn't have plane tickets, doesn't have a plan, I'm sorry, Shaun. I'm gonna offend you and your audience. You guys are fucking morons. I just can't fathom. This is like I'll give you the flip side. From an American standpoint, the way I look at it, this is like what happened in 1774. The people who are farmers in the 13 colonies, they had a decision. Are we going to leave? At that time, there was nowhere to go. Or do we put down our pitchforks and pick up a musket and fight dirty? Well, that's what they did. You guys can't even do that because you don't have guns. So you only have one option in 2025. Take your wealth and vote. Vote the way they can't stage the election. Take your money and run. That's what you do. You leave your best asset in the ground and run away, set up shop for 2 or 3 generations, and once this passes, you come back. They're never going to be able to take your asset out of the ground. They're not.
You wouldn't, in fairness, you wouldn't see, like, staying and getting Alberta out.
I mean, I would say yes, but I think you're way too late. I mean, you had to do that before Carney got in. The perfect time to do that is when the idiot Trudeau was in. He was a bad politician. He was a bad leader. You had perfect proxy to do it at that time, and you didn't do it. Instead, you were like, oh, Pierre Poilievre is going to save us. Well, that didn't work either. Sorry. The only thing good about him was that he was a Bitcoiner. He was telling you all the truth, but y'all didn't listen. So, I mean, I'm going to tell you, I look at Canada as my patients that have low-grade gliomas, and I warn them, you got 5 or 10 years, but eventually that tumor is going to de-differentiate into a glioblastoma grade 4, and then you got a year to live. Dude, that's where you're at. You now have a grade 4 glioma. What the fuck are you going to do? Are you going to sit down and just, masturbate yourself away to slavery? Because I have to tell you, I am just astounded. And, one of my best friends who is with me in Prague, he's from Ontario. He's a Canadian. He's getting his family out right now. His family, literally in the last 3 months, got the wake-up call. They're out.
The convoy was started by Albertans in Saskatchewan. It's
Correct.
there. So I don't take offense Jack. I think it's an interesting insight. That's why I have you on. I don't expect you to come in and try and coddle Canadians. I think that'd be ridiculous. But on the flip side, I go, but if the way out is to get out, you say you should have done it when Trudeau was in, and people would argue
easier. It's easier. I think you guys are gonna have a hard.
It might have been easier because Trudeau was an idiot.
Well, no, it's because the bank regulations. You got to remember, Carney knows how the bank works. I would say to anybody right now, if you're a Canadian with any kind of resources, 5, 10, 15, 20 million dollars, go to the bank and try to get your money out right now. They're going to laugh at you. I already know this. How can I tell you, Shaun? I've got Canadian members actively trying to do this. They can't get their money out. I think it's already too late. And the only way for you to have done that is to be pulling money out.
Well, then it makes the option quite clear then. Honestly, if it's too late to get your money out, then you got one option.
Correct.
And that's to get Alberta out.
But you don't have guns. Lots of luck.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. We don't have guns like the United States, but we're not Australia.
Yeah,
we do have guns.
I got news for you. Compared to the guys that Carney controls, look, you're coming to this gunfight with a sword. You're a lot like the Polacks were fighting the Nazis in 1939. And I'm just going to tell you, I like a lot of you guys. I just cannot believe how poor a group of you really were, to allow this to happen. And I think, my opinion, the smart move now, even if you can only recapture 10%, 20% of your wealth, get it in Bitcoin and get it across. That's the way to go. Because this is the one thing I can tell you about the guy that you guys choose to hate all the time. Trump is going to make that 10 or 20% probably more rich than your full 100% right now in Canada. He's got to. Why? Because remember, the industrial military complex in the United States is trying to kill Americans at record rates. Just so you know, we inject 25,000 children a day with the bioweapon. If you follow the current data, 3,000 to 5,000 Americans, I should say not Americans, people who took the jab are dying every single week. So the killing fields, the tapering and the Ponzi scheme is actively ongoing. Why? Because remember, when you kill people, the way our tax laws are set up, very similar to yours, that there's a wealth and estate tax. You lose a lot of that money, goes back to the state. That's actually helps the state, doesn't help your family. So that's the reason I give the advice that I give to Americans and Canadians literally for almost 15 years, that you need to have this plan fully in place. If you don't have the plan fully in place, then you're going to have to do partials. I mean, I'll share this story with you because it's a Canadian story, but I want you to fully get the impact of what I'm saying. So I have a member, been a member a long time, over 10 years. Family owns a significant real estate portfolio in British Columbia. The mom and dad have a very, how shall I say, aggressive mindset because they happen to be Chinese origin. They had one son. The son was my member. And I told that person that he needed to do everything in his power 10 years ago to get even 5 or 10% of their wealth. Their wealth was at the time fairly substantial, $600, $700, $800 million of real estate. And that's real estate that improved over time when they came over in the 40s and 50s. Most of downtown Vancouver, let's put it that way. All right. And he was successful after his father died. His father was kind of like Mao Zedong, wouldn't give him an inch. And his mother decided to give him some money. I think he got a total of $10 million. He fled Canada and invested wisely. He's now turned that money into probably $250 million in 7 years. His mother is now elderly, infirmed, and the province that she lives in will not let her take more than $5,000 out a day. And this is a woman who probably has more money than most Canadians that will ever listen to this story. So remember, if you've got 700, $800 million in real estate and you can only take out $500,000 a day, let me ask you something, Shaun. Does that define slavery or not? Because it sure sounds like it to me. And the key thing is, what was the metric? The metric was she didn't make the decision in the proper time frame. So that's the issue. So what does Canada basically say to this lady? We know that you're going to die soon and your money is going to come back to us in wealth taxes and real estate transfers. So we're going to get 70, 80% of that money back. So do you understand why now they are incentivized to keep you guys on the plantation? And your compliance has made it worse. You can't comply with anything they ask you to do, even if it sounds reasonable. The answer should always be no. And unfortunately, the one thing I do know about my Canadian friends, you're far too compliant. The only place you'll ever find a Canadian fight is on an ice hockey rink. That's it. And that needs to change. Because your way of life, your family values, your sovereignty, your loyal title to your property, it's under attack.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that. I mean, I think we've once again, a guy wishes he could go back in time to 2015 to 2010. Take your pick. I don't care.
I don't want you to wish to go back in time, Shaun. I want you to take out what you can get out, your 5 or 10%, because Trump is going to turn that 5 or 10% into 50, 60, 80% while you're in exile. And then that's going to be your nut to come back to Canada and take things over when they completely run into the ground. I mean, it's the same process that's going on in Venezuela now. Remember, all the oil's still in the ground. The politicians have no way to get it out. All the people that were there to pull the oil out of the ground, they all left because no one's going to stick around when you got communism or fascism. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, I don't understand. I just think it's hard for Canadians to believe that what happened in Venezuela is going to happen to Canada. But that's exactly what's happening. Like, it's blatantly obvious. Why it's not obvious to you guys, I don't know, and I really don't care. But I tell Americans the same thing I'm telling you. We're about 10 years behind you, but it's coming for sure. No doubt about it.
And we're not talking, Jack, a year or 2 or 3. You're throwing out 50 to 75 years. No, and the fact we're into it, and then it's going to extend 50 to 75 years.
Yeah, because that's how long it's going to take to break the stranglehold. Why? Because remember how communism and fascism always comes in as a political movement, but the only way you take it out is through a revolution. And you guys don't like to fight. You're not going to fight. The only way you're going to fight is after you realize for 40, 50 years, they really took it to us. Then you're going to get madder in hell. And hopefully the people that are in exile say, okay, I'm ready to spend some of this money that I pulled out. Let's go fight them. Let's go back and retake our government. Let's go get our land back. That's effectively what's going to happen. And, that's the reason why I told you earlier, I think every Canadian should get on the phone and talk to somebody from Czech, talk to somebody from Estonia, talk to somebody from Latvia, because that's exactly what happened there. And they now have a very healthy respect for decentralization's power. And, I can tell you that those people for me have been a godsend, because when I went to Czech Republic last year to give my first talk, I was stunned about how open they were to this diagnosis. They're like, we're not going to play with the BIS. We're not going to play with the World Economic Forum. We don't care what is going on in the EU. We are not going to participate. And I have to tell you, that's the part of Europe that's awake. Like, not all of Europe is dead, but all of Canada is dead. I don't care how powerful the people were in Alberta and Saskatchewan. You now have Carney. That's a problem. It's a big problem.
I had put out the thought a long time ago now, well, years ago, I guess, that COVID, was a wake-up call to all Canadians, right? We had the Freedom Convoy go and show what could be done and can be done in a time where, we just had centralization at a mass effect. Everybody had to march in lockstep. It was like full-blown communism. You could just see it, feel it everywhere you walked.
Shaun, what I said is that COVID was a compliance test for the coming economic reset.
Sure.
So that's my diagnosis. And the reason I interrupted you there, I want your audience to understand where I'm coming from. I always knew COVID was a bullshit story. I always knew that it was a planned psyops. But the planned psyops in my country is because of the debt issue. There's no way out of a debt spiral unless you come in with a new currency and things like that. So what did they want to see? They wanted to see how many people would really comply with what had to happen. And they also, at the same time, DARPA came up with the miraculous idea, let's kill the people that comply. Why? Because if we kill enough people, then we don't have to pay them out. We can taper the Ponzi scheme that way. Because there's no way to taper a Ponzi scheme unless you get rid of the people that are asking for their money back. Got it? So that is the two-prong plan. Well, I would say 50% of America, even some of the ones that took the jab, now realize that that was the plan. Now they're fighting back. The problem is a large portion of them put their eggs with Trump. They're not totally losing because Trump did bring in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is the ultimate solution to the shit show that you guys are dealing with. You're not getting that. See, that you're not getting Bitcoin in Canada. You're going to get the CBDC solution. You're going to get the digital IDs. You're going to get true what it's like to have really nice malls, Starbucks, and Netflix, but you're a slave on the plantation. They are not going to let you leave. You're going to work for the state, and that's just the way it's going to be.
You don't see this as a moment in time then, the next year, roughly, where Alberta could find a way to get out?
No, I think you're done. Do I think you need to do it? Yeah. But let me just tell you something. We have a saying in the United States you probably heard of, shit or get off the pot. How long is it going to take? How many bitch slaps in the face do you guys need? I mean, you already got a ton. This would be like you playing hockey and people just come out and kick the shit out of you over and over and over again. And you don't respond.
It'd be like the Sedins from when they were playing for the Canucks in the finals against Boston, getting punched in the face, and you're like, can somebody hit them back?
Right.
For the love of God, can somebody hit them back?
That actually is a very apt description of how I see things. And look, I'm rooting for you, Shaun. But you got to remember something. I'm a realist also. You haven't showed me anything that shows me you have any life. You just had a chance with this election, and you failed miserably. So what am I trying to say to you? This is the most important thing I'm saying to you now, not the audience. You have put too much faith in your countrymen. It's now time for you to realize this is an N=1 game, okay? You have to do what's right for Shaun Newman and Shaun Newman's family. And any Canadian who's listening to this, that listens to you and says, you know what, then Jack is speaking to me as well, because this is an N=1 game. Doesn't mean that you're not on the same team. Doesn't mean that your audience isn't the same. It just means that the country that you guys are going to form are going to be outside the borders of Canada. You're still going to be Canadian, but you're going to run it the right way. And then you have to come back, come up with a plan to take your country back. I think the same thing is going to happen in the United States. I really do. But the United States is on a different time scale. Why? Because they're going to be able to get 50 to 75 more years of using their global reserve currency, because they're going to back the treasury market with Bitcoin. You guys ain't doing that. You're going a completely different way. So that means you can't follow our lead anymore, because your government is no longer giving you that, how shall we say, margin of safety.
I don't know how much faith I put in my countrymen in Canada, like all of Canada. As the election started and we were doing election coverage on it, I wrote down the prediction that the Liberals were getting in. I didn't want to believe it, but I'm like, that's what everything tells me is about to happen. And that played out. I have no faith in Eastern Canada anymore, like zero. I don't see anything there that tells me they're going to all of a sudden redirect this ship. No, I agree with your thought on the Titanic and the boats up, and one of the things that the group of us here have been talking about is there might be a chance here in Alberta. And if Albertans can't get this done, if you haven't done everything you've just been talking about, the plan B, essentially, or whatever anyone wants to call it, if they don't have that in their pocket, then they're not looking at the situation for the gravity that is sitting in front of us.
Correct.
But I look at it and I see what's going on in Alberta. I see the conversations that are happening. I see the town halls that are full. And I see a ton of Albertans that are, this conversation is about as red hot as it gets. And I see an opportunity. I do.
But I need to see action. Talk is cheap.
Sure. Absolutely. I don't disagree.
I need you guys to put 3 goals in the net. Like, you need to start scaring the fuck out of the government. That's what you need to do.
Well, since the election, which was April 28th, the day after, Daniel Smith reduced the citizen-led referendum requirements. So that was one. Saskatchewan and Alberta have met. From a government standpoint, that's big news. Whether or not you see it the way I see it, I think that's big news of how they're placing. But from a citizen standpoint, the conversation is red hot. They're meeting all the time, and they're pushing to get the referendum question on the ballot pushed forward in the next year or less. To me, I look at that and I go, if that happens, okay, referendum gets called and they vote it out, everything you've said, I can't disagree with a single thing. If Alberta won't vote itself out of this situation, then we are utterly screwed.
Right.
But I look at it and I see an opportunity for Albertans specifically.
Yeah, but you have to hedge yourself. I mean, look, if you're
100%, I agree. I 100% agree with what you're saying.
You can't. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this. I'm like, this is when you have to be like a Wall Street trader. You go like, okay, I'm gonna go with these Albertans, but I got news to you. I'm taking 20-30% of my wealth out. I'm hedging my bet. Why? There's no way that I'm betting with these people. They haven't done it when they should have done it. And now you're going to tell me in the 9th inning you're going to hope for a grand slam? I mean, okay, Shaun. But, to me, this is where you're playing into your audience because you're all in the same fucking group together. That's not how Jack Kruse plays. Jack Kruse says, you had a low-grade glioma for 10 years. Now you got a GBM. You need to fucking do something, okay? Stop fucking talking. Stop mean and do something. Put 3 goals in the net and scare the Americans that, hey, we actually could come back from this 5-goal deficit. You need to do something like that. And I don't care how you do it, but it's a matter of doing it. It's going to take the Albertans probably that have the most money to actually do it. Get out of Dodge and let them know we will pull our infrastructure with it. That's it. Simple. End of report. And to be honest with you, I'd have a plan C. My plan C is I'd take a trip down and talk to Trump. Absolutely would do that. You need to put the fear of God in Carney. But just realize when you're dealing with Trump, you're dealing with Carney helped out his son-in-law. So make sure there's no illusions that he also may not give you the full help that you need. But one thing I can tell you about Trump, he's an opportunist. If he knew that he'd get his hands on oil fields, sure. I think he would, break the bond with his friend, Carney, and not help out. But I think everything's on the table, Shaun. Everything.
Well, Jeff Rath in that group, and I don't expect you to know the name, sorry, Jack, but a group here in Alberta that is running the all the town halls, collecting all the information to get forward to a referendum, have gone down to Washington. They've already done that. They've and they've been called traitors and all the words that happen. It reminds me kind.
You want to be called a traitor in this case?
It reminds me of COVID because anytime you spoke out about COVID, they labeled you 80 things. I don't need to explain that to you. It's just these are the badges they're going to put on you when you don't march with the narrative.
Right. You need to keep doing that. In other words, the more the propaganda comes out against you, the more proud that you need to expose your heart to the arrows. It's as simple as that. That's the battle you're in. And I know it's daunting. Trust me. But I've been telling my own countrymates for a long, long time that the battle that we're in the United States is the same battle that we fought in 1774. It's no different. And it's led by the same pieces of shit, to be honest with you. And this whole story is about a Lloydial title. The Crown has been trying to recapture what they lost in 1774 and in 1917. They want to take us back to feudalism. They want to take us back to medievalism, where Klaus Schwab famously said, "You'll own nothing and be happy about it." They're not being covert, Shaun. They're being very overt about it. And you have to understand, when they're this overt about it, they're telling you that's how much power they think they have. And I think for Canadians, when you can move from Trudeau to Carney, that's a really bad sign. Because you just went, your hole is 50 feet deep, now it's 100 feet deep. You're not getting out of that hole. Secession is the only plan, or I think the safe plan is people that are Albertans that have a lot of money, they need to hedge their bets. That's exactly what they need to do. And it needs to happen.
I know a lot of big business already done it, or already in the process of doing it. There's just a lot of everyday citizens who listen to this show, for sure, that feel like they don't have that option. They don't have the 100 million.
You do have the option. Just remember something. Canadians all know the story of Ellis Island. Most of the people that came to our country, from 1850 through 1920, they had nothing but a pot to piss in. Okay? And guess what? We're now a country of 360 million, largely because probably at least 160 million of those people descended from those 20 million. So I'm just going to tell you, I disagree and realize that Biden just let in 20 million illegal immigrants because of that experiment that happened at Ellis Island. Why? This was the reverse of it. Let's let in all the dregs of society so that they can do the job that our military can't. It's not going to look at to turn the guns of the military on our own citizens. The reason why El Salvador is so safe now is not only because they have a president that gets it, but guess what? The guns of the CIA and FBI are no longer pointed at the people in Central America. They're pointed now to the American taxpayer. That's the real reality of what happened, November 22nd, 1963, where you have a military coup running the United States. That coup is now firmly in the throes of the ninth inning of effectively gaining control of all three parts of the power in our country. And if you are an American, and I want to be very clear when I say this to you, Shaun, I've already gone through what you're going through in this podcast with me. If you don't think that this was a really difficult decision for me, that's the reason why I live in El Salvador. I'm still an American citizen. In fact, I'm in my clinic right now in Louisiana seeing some of my American clients. But what am I telling them? I don't think I'll be able to see you much longer in America, because I don't think America is going to be as sustainable, once Trump's out. I said, until Bitcoin is actually on the books backing the treasury market, I said, that is the signal that Americans have another 50 to 70 years. But it's also going to be the signal for Canadians that this is when things are going to get rapidly worse for you. Why? Because our currency is going to do spectacular compared to yours, and you're our upstairs neighbor. You are going to get taken to the woodshed. Any country that is not competing with their bonds on a Bitcoin standard is absolutely going to be devastated. So I want you to realize all those people that are holding real estate assets in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, these are the people that are going to go from the wealthiest Canadians right now to the poorest Canadians, and their assets will all be taken by the state. Mark my words. That's the plan. And if you're an Albertan sitting on shale fields, The oil, they're not going to be able to get out of the ground. You'll still have your TADU. You take all your legal paperwork with you, even if they nationalize it. That nationalization order is only good for while they're in power. They will not be in power long term. If you don't believe me, look what happened in the USSR. Look what happened in China. China's on borrowed time as well. Just like the people that control the desert are in trouble in Israel. He's on borrowed time too. That's the reason why he's got the war going on. If you think Ukraine is settled, it's not settled. These are all the remnants of the Obama-Biden regime. Those are the guys that were propping up, Ethereum. All the other cryptos besides Bitcoin. These are the things that would lock you up in jail. Are some of those things still active in the United States? Yeah, I can tell you. The guys that running Ripple, Ethereum, they all hate fucking Bitcoin. Absolutely hate it with a passion. But they're all proxies for the Communist Party of China. And you know that, like BC especially, has got a lot of CCP elements in it. I mean, it's not, I don't think that's any news to any Canadian. I mean, we all know that. But, when I talk to a guy like you, I appreciate that you have an outsider like me to come in to explain this to you. I know that you didn't know this about me before you and I met the first time, but I have a substantial amount of Canadians that are members of mine. I can tell you I've had NHL players from Canada stay in my house in El Salvador, sons that will be drafted in the first round of future NHL drafts. And I tell them the same thing I'm telling you, that you can still be Canadian, you can still have what you want, but you need to have a citadel outside of Canada to protect your family. That doesn't mean they can't go back and still play hockey. It doesn't mean they still can't go back and run their oil fields and this and that. But you have to keep your economic sovereignty intact. And sometimes that means you have to take 2 steps backwards. It's very similar to an NHL defenseman. When you're facing Messier or Gretzky or Sidney Crosby or even the clown that's playing for Edmonton now, and he's got offensive firepower, sometimes that great defenseman has to take and skate backwards and give ground up to make the defensive play. That's the situation you're in right now, Shaun. And you need remember, it's not survival of the fittest anymore, it's survival of the wisest. And this podcast that you and I are having right now, I'm asking people to look in the mirror and really make an accurate diagnosis and then make the best decision for your family. That's my concern with you guys. And I don't think sometimes staying and fighting, like I try to remind you guys of our history. Remember that Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison spent almost 5 to 10 years of their time in France before we declared our independence. Why? Because these ideas were cooking in their heads. Like, how do you run away from the most powerful entity on the planet at the time? How do you physically do this? And they found at that time that the pen was mightier than the sword. When the last true thing that I can tell you that was really wholly American that was ever done in my country was actually before my country was a country. It was the Declaration of Independence. I would strongly recommend that every Canadian who is in Alberta that has this bent go read what Thomas Jefferson wrote to the king. That was a very powerful statement. Why? Because it delineated out what would eventually become the core of the United States, at least for the first or next 50 years. Now, was everything shits and giggles for the United States early on? No, it was a big struggle. No one would have ever predicted that the United States would head where it goes. But I would remind Canadians, because I don't think you know our history that well, Queen Victoria takes over in 1837, and she leads a group from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. That's actually how we get the United States Civil War. Remember, her people that were working for her are the ones that actually shot Abraham Lincoln. And because Lincoln became a martyr, she actually helped us become a better country from 1861 onward until we screwed it up ourselves in the Treaty of Versailles, where, again, loyalists to the crown were part of Woodrow Wilson's committee. That's John Foster Dulles and his brother Allen Dulles. And it turns out that both of those guys were involved in the military coup that took JFK out. So I want you to understand that if you don't do it now, Shaun, when are you going to do it? Because these people aren't going to stop. The one thing I can tell you about your motherland, which is the King of England and the monarchy, ever since the Magna Carta, these people don't plan for 20, 30 years. They plan for fucking hundreds and thousands of years. You are a fucking speed bump to them. Okay? Don't forget that. And I can tell you the thing about my ancestors, who were the misfits that came over from Britain, that told the king, fuck you, we're going to shoot at you. There's still a large group of us in the United States that feel that way. Most of them are Bitcoiners now. We have an irreverence for freedom. Once you get drunk on freedom, it's really hard to give it back. And we are going to fight tooth and nail. If that means that I have to go offshore and talk shit about, Bobby Kennedy and Trump and everything that I'm doing in my power right now to try to keep my country as free and sovereign as possible. I have no illusions. We're not as free. We have the illusion of freedom in the United States, okay? But I would tell you, you don't even have an illusion in Canada. You're already slaves. You're already there. And I want you to understand, I want this to be your punch in the mouth. I want you to realize that you are now in my boot camp, and I'm the drill sergeant, and I'm telling you what I'm telling you. And I know this is not a shit sandwich that any of you like, but you remember something. Drill sergeants are doing this so you can get better, that you can make the diagnosis and you do the right things to fight for your sovereignty. I want every single Canadian out there listening to this to fight like hell for their sovereignty. The best Canadians, in my view, are the free Canadians, not the ones that live in Vancouver and not the ones that live in Montreal, not the ones that live in Toronto. So it's about time you guys do something about it. It's done talking. It's now time for action. And right now, the only option I think you have, since you don't have guns, is Bitcoin. Get as much of Bitcoin as you possibly can, because that is a vote against the tyranny that's going on in Canada. It's just like it's a vote for tyranny here, in the United States. And I can tell you that's the reason why they gave Trump a haircut in his ear in Butler, Pennsylvania. They don't want a guy coming in and giving some of the misfits in the United States a potential out card. Why? Because that extends the experiment of freedom that began with Thomas Jefferson in that Declaration of Independence.
I actually don't know if I have anything to say to that. I think if I'm sitting here, I'm going to go re-listen to this. I'm going to think about some of the things you've said, honestly. And I'll be interested.
It's truly how I feel about it. I mean, I care deeply. I have a lot of Canadian friends. Like I told you, a lot of Canadian members. But I have to tell you, you're the most frustrating group of people I've ever dealt with. Why? You trust too much. You are the definition of anti-Bitcoin. You trust and you don't verify. I want you to verify and trust. That's all I'm asking you to do. I want you to switch around the dynamic. And when you go to these town hall meetings and the politicians are there, just assume all of them are lying bastards, because they are. Every last one of them. But you know who's not a lying bastard? Probably Shaun and the people listen to this podcast. You guys, this is your country. Do something about it. Fight for it. If you want to stay and fight, Uncle Jack will still be behind you. But I'm still going to tell you, my job as a neurosurgeon is to make the diagnosis. And I think the diagnosis right now is your tumor's gone from a low-grade glioma to a high-grade glioma. And when you do that, your choices get limited. And what's the one good thing about the U.S. military? They make all these books out there. It talks about survival guides. You know what the key for the Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force survival guide is? The people that survive are the ones that make the first right decision. 90% of the time, those are the people that survive. So, Shaun, we are in that situation right now. And I'm telling you, the single most important decision for any Canadian to make is, without a doubt, to transfer as much of your wealth as you possibly can in Bitcoin. Then you figure out what you want to do with your family. Whether you're going to stay and fight, whether you're going to secede, or whether you're going to go, find, sanctuary in Costa Rica or Nicaragua or El Salvador, wherever. Doesn't matter where you decide to go, or you're just going to go buy a 60-foot catamaran and travel the seas. But I'm okay with whatever you choose. But I just want you to know that even when you're in exile, you still need to stay active like you're doing here, Shaun, teaching the savages what needs to be done. Why? Because there's going to be people left behind in Canada that didn't make the right decision. Doesn't mean they're any less. Just means they weren't good diagnosticians, and now they're slaves on the plantation, and they're going to need the people's outside help. And you have to decide if you were wise enough to get out, is sovereignty and freedom worth fighting for? In my opinion, I'm on the outside looking in, and I think it is.
Appreciate you hopping on, Jack, and doing this.
No problem. Anytime. Anytime you want to talk about freedom, sovereignty, freedom maximalism, as far as I'm concerned, this is what binds all of us as humans.
I agree. And there have been sobering thoughts today, but I appreciate you coming on and doing this. Hopefully it won't be the last time. And, I look forward to the next time we're talking. Maybe Albertans will give you something to hope for.